to continue our talk on leadership, maturity levels, personal maturity levels, as well as leadership maturity levels, because you truly can't be a great leader if you're personally or have low leadership maturity. And being a leader, as we talked about, requires you to have voluntary followers. What do voluntary followers mean? That means that you're a good vision caster. You cast and have a vision and a mission, and you are able to inspire and motivate people to work towards completing that goal, that vision, that mission, and they would do it, and they do it voluntarily. So this is obviously super key to people that work in non-profit or voluntary environments, which sometimes have the best leaders, because the only way that they can build a team is to gather volunteers, as well as corporate America, because as we have learned, right, up to 75%, according to Blake and Mouton, that managerial grid, that goes back to the 1960s, to give you an idea, are incompetent or just average leaders, or they're actually just managers. Only 25% of people that are in roles of responsibility are true leaders. And to be a true leader is to mean that you're a team builder. And again, that team is not one that is led or built through coercion or necessarily led by the carrot and the stick. I can get anybody to follow me if I dangle $100 bills out and say, come follow me, and if you do what I ask you to do, I'll give you X amount of money. I mean, the mafia does that. So think about the fact that if you're a carrot and a stick leader, in other words, you can't get people to follow you unless you offer them money, and if they don't follow you and do the things that you want them to do, you punish them. You're no better of a leader than someone that's in the mafia. You're a dictator, you're not a leader. And so we want to be positive and bring out the positive aspects of being a leader, and that is, how in the heck do I mature to the point of what's called an achiever? This is beyond the expert level. And since we do a lot with the first responder community, think about this. We have wonderful, wonderful experts, and everybody that works for a first responder is an expert at what they do. There's an expert police officer. There's the expertise of being a detective. There's an expertise of being a narcotics officer. There's an expertise at being a spy. There's an expertise in the fire department of being on an EMT or a paramedic, or the driver of one of the large engines, or to be one that mans the hoses. I like to watch some of the annual certifications, since we are very good friends with a lot of first responders, and every year they go through what's called fire ops. And many of our public officials will actually also go through the fire ops, or fire ops 101 is what they call it, so they can experience a little bit about what a first responder goes through and the expertise that is needed to fulfill each one of those roles. But if you want to run an organization, and let's say you want to be a SWAT leader, you've got to go beyond the expert stage. You might be an expert shot, an expert in ballistics, an expert at whatever that might be, but you've got to go beyond that and become an achiever, a team builder. And you need to understand how to build teams in a positive fashion in which your teammates will fight for you and lay down their lives for you, because nowhere more important than in our first responder and military community is teamwork. Their lives are literally at risk and depend on one another. So this is the beginning levels of leadership and getting people to follow you voluntarily, and much of that relies upon your personal leadership level. Instead of having to be a coercive, tyrant, mafioso style leader, otherwise known as Machiavellian leaders, or I almost said a couple of people's names, but I won't do that. Just joking. No, I'm not joking. I'm serious. Or you can become someone who's an actual inspirational leader that gets things done in a positive way and is far more effective than the other style. So instead of leading with fear, let's lead positively with inspiration. Behind me you see that we've got our slides. We discussed we were going to talk about the Enneagram. And the Enneagram is actually a study. It does come out of some religious backgrounds. But what was happening in the philosophical realm, this PhD doctoral realm, and behavioral sciences realm, which many of us in leadership operate and are learning in, is that the study of human behavior all of a sudden started showing direct links to spiritual spiritual aspects or spiritual ideas. And as people began to study personality types and how people function, they began to actually realize that there's correlation between the spiritual part of our being, our body, and our soul. That this is actually something that really exists. And so last time we discussed that we were going to share some tests where we could identify some things about ourselves in regard to our personalities, how we personally operate, our strengths and our weaknesses. It's like doing a SWOT, strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat test on our own persons, which I actually highly recommend that you do. If you want to begin to mature, we do SWOT analysis all the time of outside things. But if you remember from last time, right? Oh, wrong way. Last time, right? The upper here is inward focused, right? That means if you're going to do a SWOT analysis, gap analysis, 360 degrees analysis, it's going to be somebody else because you're looking at them objectively. But if you want to actually become a better person, better leader, and advance in your career, and just frankly be more personally happy and more fulfilled, you're going to move down here to the lower level and you're going to think we, and you're going to think all of us, or we as a corporation and the entire corporation, we as a division and then the entire corporation. We also discussed the fact that Myers-Briggs test is really not the ideal thing to take, and it seems like that's what everybody takes, and they think that that's like the personality Bible. One of the reality is that there's a gentleman that we're going to discuss from Oxford University that has done some studying on its foundations, and its foundations are faulty. And personally, as a behavioral scientist, the thing that bothered me, I almost wrote my dissertation on whether or not the Myers-Briggs test is still valid or is valid at all. And one of the things that greatly concerned me about that test is it was developed in the 1960s based on white, middle-class Americans. And heavens to goodness we all know that that's not the demographics that encompasses today's United States, nor does it encompass the global ideals of the world. And so it also only had 16 personality types, whereas the Enneagram is based on scientific study and has identified over 1,100 personality combinations. Over 1,100, not 16, over 1,100. In studying those 1,100, it's boiled them down into 9 main categories. And these 9 main categories, is very interesting, happen to fall. This means that when you're looking at humanity, beyond race, beyond religion, beyond culture, and you're looking at humanity and how we operate as people, just as humans, right? That it's interesting that all of these 1,100 plus personality combinations boiled into 9 main areas divided into 3 main categories. Once again, science talking about backing up exactly what humans have relatively known based on their spirituality of this idea of a triune person and needing to develop each part of our being. So there are body types, and when you say body types, this isn't like, Twinkies, Doritos, pears, that kind of apples, that kind of thing. It's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is your instinctual type, who you are instinctually, as far as kind of what we would say, what's the focus of your lizard brain, maybe? That ancient type of your brain, and is that where you function mostly out of? Next is that emotional part, and we talked about the soul, the mind, will, and the emotions in the past, and if you take a look at what we're thinking about, the feeling types. Are you more feeling oriented, and how does that actually affect you as a person and how you function? And the last type is thinking types, which are intellectual types. And I just think that that's really interesting that we have what I would, instinctual, 3 types, emotional types, intellectual types. Again, tying very, very close in my book into that Judeo-Christian viewpoint of body, soul, and spirit, and the soul being triune as well, being mind, will, and emotions. And if you think about this is pretty crazy, right? You have your instinct, which is your will. You have your emotions, which is your emotions. And you have your thinking, which is your mind. This is not a theological study. This is a behavioral sciences PhD philosophical study of how humans operate, and yet here we have the truth. And now we're going to divide it even further, and we're going to take each of the 3 parts and divide them into 3 parts. Very interesting, isn't it? So there's 9 main types, and then each one of these types have a wing type, and you can become mature in each one's, but there's also something that's called a shadow type. And the shadow type is kind of your anti-type. It's, you have one that you're very strong at, and then you have one that you're very weak at. And in maybe an Asian or in one aspect of a religious thought, you might think yin yang, where it might be presented in a way that you've got one area that's very good, or the light part, and even in that there's a little darkness, and then part of the person is very dark, but even in the darkness there's a little bright spot of something that could improve it. And these things work against each other. This is a very common viewpoint of how things operate in general for much of the world, but we go a little deeper than that and get into not only, yes, we have a shadow type and a strength type, but we also have what are called wings. We have sub strengths of who we are, and then because the study has been based on how humans actually behave, and the study of practices that have helped people mature, it's quantified as well as qualified and proven that certain exercises have actually helped people in each of these 9 areas fix that shadow side, strengthen the shadow side, so the shadow side no longer becomes a weakness, but can actually also become a strength, and the entire person become mature. And so what are these 9 types? These 9 types are the perfectionist, the giver, the performer, the romantic, making sure they're on the screen, the observer, the loyal skeptic, the epicure, which is me. The epicure, it's like, what the heck is an epicure? An epicure is an adventurous. They're the entrepreneur. They are the ones who think outside the box. They like new experiences. Man, if you look at the millennial and Gen Z generation, they are full of epicurists. They, it's like so many millennials travel today that the travel industry has literally gone out, done marketing studies to find out how millennials think, where they like to go, the types of travel that they like to do, the types of adventures that they like to go on while they're traveling. And the entire marketing campaigns are doing nothing but attracting millennials who are in this epicure personality type because they like to go adventure and see the world. They are open system thinkers. They're open to what humanity and the earth and knowledge and information has to offer them. And I tell you, I have some friends, the Wolframs, and now the Wolframs are world travelers themselves. And Don was a vice president of a heavy metals company, very accomplished in every area of his life. He's physically fit. He's very, very smart, highly educated. So is his wife. And they have been world travelers for many, many years. And today they are involved in working with peoples and developing people from a body, soul, and spiritual standpoint, and mainly Latin America. And what's interesting is their children, every single one of them is an epicure, at least from what I can tell from observing outside. I look at their Facebook pages and they're skydiving in Dubai. They're wanted to see the wonders of how all of the tulips and the flowers are grown in Scandinavia. So the next thing you know, they're on a weekend excursion to Scandinavia. Come to find out that they're one of these folks that the travel industry has reached out to. And there's tools in the travel industry that you can actually put in where you want to go, the type of trips you want to take, and it matches up your profile with low-cost opportunities. And so they're even helping people who maybe in their younger careers aren't financially, don't have as much disposable income as others in the main part of their careers, yet they're still able to enjoy that lifestyle that used to be reserved to the rich and the famous. And it just is really cool to watch and see their family and how the adventurists that was in their parents has been passed on to the children, and how well they're doing, and just it's just really, really cool to see that. But anyway, there's the protector, and then also the mediator, and you can find out your main type for free. Now it's not the advanced test, but I've kind of found that you can pay for the advanced test, and depending on the source, it's $200 to $500. The free one is pretty good at identifying. I mean, when I took mine, it will give you a little report, and I sent my report to my kids, and I go, how accurately does this report? Oh, that's delicious. If you haven't noticed, I'm a French roast, or Sophia, what do you call this? A French press guy. Thank you. Although I think I have a Costa Rican blend in here in my French press, so I have Latin coffee in my French coffee maker. Anyway, it is delicious. Thank you again, Sophia, our family barista. The Enneagram personality test, you can take the basic one for free. And you get back this report. So I sent this report to my kids, and I'm like, how much does this describe me? And they're like, man, dead on, to a T. This is who you are. And I just want to make a note for people who try to self-assess themselves. You can't self-assess yourself. That's an oxymoron. You are blind. You are blind. Everyone is blind in some areas of their life, some areas of their personality. You cannot look at yourself and come up with your own personality type. It's impossible. It's impossible to look at yourself completely objective. You as a being, the definition of being is subjective, meaning that your tacit knowledge of all of your life experiences color or taint your view of yourself. And so, and this is great. I love it. There's a great book. It's called On Leadership Blind Spots. And what just is great about it is that it's like, if you have a particular problem motivating and leading a certain type or group type of people, the problem isn't them. The problem is you. But most of us, because of our lizard brain and our number one driving force, psychological driving force, is self-preservation, okay? Or right, you know, your biological, physiological needs, self-preservation, right? We always look outward. Our tendency is that the problem ain't me. The problem isn't me. The problem's them. Oh, wait a minute. Our quadrant? The problem's not me. It's not I. The problem's them. Remember our quadrant that we went over, right? That is a sign of personal immaturity. You cannot look and judge who you are as a person without an external test. And that's why these things exist. So if you're the person who is always going, it's them, it's not me, you're the one that this is designed for. You are the leader. You are the person who, you can't figure out how to get into leadership, or you got into management and you failed. People just didn't like you, or they don't like you and you're still in management and you're hurting the business. And we all know those, right? And it's because, remember, those top two quadrants, if you're inward focused and you think I and them, I and you, right? It's not me. They're the problem. You're the one that this is built for. So go out, take the test. And the rest of these personality types are also for you, so that you can actually uncover where you're blind, see who you truly are. And it can be scary. A lot of people don't want to know who they are, because they feel like through some traumatic negative events in their life, they have a negative view of themselves. We used to call this an inferiority complex. Today we call it they have low self-esteem, or a person has low self-esteem. We're beginning to learn as a group of scientists, of behavioral scientists, that high self-esteem doesn't help with maturity either. Self-respect is where you begin to mature. And self-respect means that you can take a look at yourself and see the good and the bad. And you go, you know what? Everybody's got good and bad. It just makes me normal. I don't dislike myself because I have shortcomings. I'm going to look at my strengths, and I'm going to look at those and go, you know what? I kind of like those strengths. Those are some freaking great strengths. I didn't even realize how great I was in those strengths. You know what? If I start applying those strengths, man, look at this. Work would change. If I went and I started networking and I started applying my ability to listen to people, you know, I might be an introvert, I might be shy, but if I start going and I realize that in my shyness, my anti of that is my ability to actively listen to people, which is a massive strength. It's a beautiful strength. You can start going to places and networking and realize, you know what, yeah, I got this weakness that I'm a little shy around people, but I'm going to concentrate on my strengths. Matter of fact, excuse me for a minute. One of the things, and maybe I can get this up to you a little bit, right? One of the things that we go through when we talk about maturing at different levels is we literally take out and we go through what are called strength cards. So here's one I just pulled out, and the first one's called adaptability, right? So maybe you're not the otter, and I describe an otter personality type as a person who has a lot of shallow connections. They can have deep connections with a few people, but they're the ones that are the life of the party, that love getting out and meeting people. A lot of salespeople are otters, and they just get out. A lot of politicians are otters, and meet lots of different people, right? And that's a great strength. Their weakness is they're usually not the best listeners in the world, right? But they can teach themselves to be a great listener. They're extroverted, right? But your strength is their weakness. If you're introverted, you might be a great active listener, right? And you can be an incredibly adaptive partner, an incredibly adaptive person to the conversation. So instead of, quote, owning the conversation and being the one that's always talking, you use your strength to listen to the conversation, and then when you have something of value to say, you contribute to the conversation in a way that's meaningful, and you gain respect. This is that quiet person in the group that when they speak, everybody listens because they don't waste other people's time with lots of BS. They don't flowerify, or we call them glittering generational, or they don't fluff their conversations. They listen carefully. They adapt themselves to the conversation, and then they share something that's highly meaningful and impactful. This is like Abraham Lincoln in the Gettysburg Address. Gettysburg Address was, 7 minutes long? The guy that spoke before him, the presidential candidate that spoke before him, spoke for 2 hours. And after the address was done, he walked up to Abraham Lincoln and said, in 7 minutes, you said more than I did in 2 hours. Right? So these are the kind of things that we're talking about. Let's be able to mature beyond the lower levels of leadership maturity. These things are great. You get them out. Here's one for the Wolframs and their kids. Adventurous, right? We're going to talk about the Foresight creative model in just a minute on how to build teams. And one of the things as a team builder that you've got to know is you've got to understand the personality types, the maturity level of your people, and the way that they think so that you can choose the right role for them and, is in good to great, get them on the right seat of the bus. Because you can have great people on your staff, but if they're in the wrong role, the wrong seat, it's not, your corporation and organization is not going to function well. It's not going to function effectively like it could if you were able to identify who is who, where their strengths are, how to help them with their weaknesses, and then get their butts in the right seats. When that happens, you'll have a well-oiled machine, and everyone will be more profitable because the company will grow. These are the secrets to creating automatic growth within your companies. These are the secrets that other people in modern corporations that manage by positive people management and positive psychology have understood, and why they have incredible growth. There's an organization called the Sterling Group here in Florida, and they base a lot of what they do on Six Sigma and modernizing and doing team building and bringing efficiency to the companies. The other side of Six Sigma is what I discuss. This is the part of actually how in the world you get the people in the corporation to begin to do the things that you need them to do, and how to become an effective people manager, effective leadership, how to get them to apply what Six Sigma is uncovered that needs to be done. So anyway, here's another one. Action. Are you action oriented? Right? And on the back side of the cards, it discusses, I don't know if you can see that, it actually discusses the description, some questions to make sure that this is you. It talks about how to activate that strength even more, and then it talks about how to stretch it. And I used to have someone that there was one thing about this person that a leader that I admired, and that was something that he had picked up from companies or other leaders, And it was having a goal and then having a big hairy goal. And that big hairy goal was one that was like, here's my bar, and that's where I want to go. But man, I call them stretch goals. And so I remember when I took over a division for a company, and once again it was a lagging division, and they were at the point they were a cost center. And I sat down with my regional president, and we're like, well, what are our goals? What do we need to do? And I said, well, the first thing we need to do is that we need to begin to cover with revenue, I was in professional services, selling enough professional services for the company to cover the salaries and benefits and taxes, right? Salaries, benefits, taxes, and insurance, right? For the group of people that work for me and work in this division. Because right now, we're covering about half of that. And it was a heavy travel. Everybody traveled. So there were lots of travel expenses. And we weren't even covering salaries, benefits, insurance, taxes for this group. So business-wise, quite frankly, it was a failure. Professional services should be one of the most profitable parts of any business, especially a solutions or software company. And so I took it over and we sat down and we said, that's the first goal. And I said, but you know what? That's just, that's the minimal goal. What I want to do is I want to set what I call a stretch goal. And that stretch goal means that not only after, and my goal was to do this after roughly 18 months in the position. When you take over a position, it takes 6 months to figure out what the world's going on, where your weaknesses are, do your gap analysis, find out where your people need to be developed, and just get a grip on what's happening. And then the next year, you should be able to, in that first 6 months, you find out what's going on. You should be able to develop a strategic plan, and then the next 6 months put it into action, and then the following 6 months, you should start to see some real business outcomes, positive business outcomes. So I set my timeline at 18 months. And so we worked together and we developed some high payoff activities that all of the people that should be involved in, and at least I crafted them, and ran them by him, and we collaborated to perfect them. He was very helpful, one of the best regional presidents I've ever worked for, and just a generally nice man. Unfortunately, he got sick and passed away, but he was just a terrific gentleman. And long story short, we put together everything that needed to be put together to transform this team into a high-performing team. And let me look back at my card, right? Oh, this is another good one. Actually, I have this on the slide coming up, authenticity. This stretch goal was to cover all of the expenses. And what we did is we put together a strategy. Remember, that's the function, that's the area. I function at individualist strategist level. But this role was when I first was in the middle of becoming an achiever and really learning how to become an individualist and a strategist. And my regional president helped with this. And so, long story short, came up with this strategy with his help, because he was a strategist. And then we implemented it, or I implemented or oversaw implementing it. And sure enough, after the 6 months, we stabilized everything. We started to see some growth. We began to implement and get some of the people in the group training. And at the end of 6 months, I cast a vision and a mission statement. And this is originally where those two terms came from. None of us are as smart as all of us. Nothing great happens without a team. And we had to transform this group from being opportunists and diplomats and experts into becoming experts that also understood the importance of teamwork and the importance that it's okay to ask for help with your weaknesses. Because the way that I designed the team, and unfortunately I did have to let some people go because they just shouldn't have been on the team in the first place. Matter of fact, when I let one person go, Human Resources looked at their resume that had been on file and literally asked me, who hired this person? Did you hire this person? And I'm like, no, this person has been in the position, 3 or 4 years prior to me arriving. And they're like, this person should have never even been hired into the role. And so unfortunately, there was some attrition. I had to let some of the people go. But then I was very purposeful, which we're going to talk about next, in who I hired. And so, because I needed to replace them with the right people and get them on the right bus and help them understand that you can be an expert in one area and still have some weaknesses, but I am an expert that's an expert in your weakness. And because we had a big travel budget, we started doing this, moving the shelves around. And all of a sudden, I got your back, you got my back, and we literally built a team that was intertwined together, like they call it in the IT world, a mesh network. We literally looked like a fishing net. And our closure rates were 80%. We went from the lowest closure rate in the company to 80%. And never averaged, I don't know. We averaged between 70 and 80% the whole time I was there. That's insane. A good sales rep will tell you that they close 35 to 50% or 50% closure rate, according to Sterling experts here in Florida. A 50% closure rate is typically best in class. We were like 80%. That's an insane number. An insane number. 80%. But we did it by what we're talking about. So let's move on. So that's the stretch goal. So anyway, when we hit our stretch goal, not only did we hit our stretch goal, we exceeded our stretch goal by about 14%. And instantaneously, remember that number one guy that I was telling you about in the Northeast? Instantaneously, we were literally within dollars. When you divided the amount of revenue and productivity brought in per employee, we went from second to last to literally within dollars of being number one. That close to the G.I. Joe with the Kung Fu grip. That close. So anyway, this stuff really works. So that's the basic Enneagram. And again, you can go to Truity, TruityTRUITY.com/test/Enneagram personality test. And or just go to Truity.com and go to the search thing and search for Enneagram test, or free, and take the test there. I recommend the site. There's a couple others I recommend, but this one's very nicely put together, and you can get that. And then there's a book, and you can actually just go out. The one that I recommend, I hit the wrong button. The one that I recommend, and I just wanted to pull it up real quick, you can go out to my Amazon.com tool and search for, you can search for it too, and it's called the Essential Enneagram. And this is the one that I have. Let's see if I can pull it up here a little bigger so you can see it on the screen. Are you kidding me? Hold on. Sorry about that. I figured I'd get a bigger picture so you can see it on screen. Here, let me blow it up. There you go. That's what it looks like. Hopefully you can see that. That's the book I have. That's the book that my doctoral program used. There are others, but I really found this one useful. My kids have found it useful. And the cool thing about this book is it goes in, shows you how to identify your wing types, shows you and talks to you about what your shadow type is, and then goes through a set of exercises. And those exercises are specifically designed for you, for your type, to develop you in the areas in which you're both strong and weak. So you become stronger in your strengths, right? So maybe you're an authentic person, right? Authenticity in leadership is a massive strength. You can overcome a lot of weaknesses by being authentic. And this is part of your personality type. It will show you some of your weaknesses and then show you how to shore up or make those weaknesses become stronger. And again, your maturity level goes up, your personal leadership maturity level goes up, personal maturity level goes up, and your ability to create and inspire voluntary followers goes up, and your ability to get things done follows. It's a natural thing. You can get to the point where you're so good at this, you don't even have to try anymore. It just becomes who you are. And so when I go into an environment and I'm going to take over a team, it is just who I am. And I have friends that look at me and go, Greg, there are just some things we don't understand about you. Everything you do prospers. Everything that you do makes money. I don't understand what it is about you. And it's simply, this is just who I've become. And so I truly believe, like in the last chapter of my book, that there is something called autopoietic systems that you can build into your life and build into your business that just create success. And it is true. Successful people like to be around other successful people because they spur each other on. What? Into positive action. Right? So that's the book. Good book. Get it. Read it. Take the test on Truity. And then do the exercises and develop yourself in body, soul, and spirit. So the next one we want to talk about is what's called the foresight system. Now, there's lots of different systems. We've already talked about, and in my opinion, Myers-Briggs is just, I don't put any credibility into it. It's been debunked, and I'll show you the book that was written about it. Even Forbes magazine, come on, if you can't trust a magazine in business, like Forbes, there's definitely a problem with your trustability. Maybe that's one of your weaknesses, is ability to trust, especially scientists. I don't trust necessarily the guy on the soapbox all the time, but I do trust science, and I do trust facts and figures. And they have scientifically studied the fact that, for the most part, Myers-Briggs is fairly baseless. And it's just a cash cow. It's a money-making machine. So anyway, we'll get to that in a little bit. But foresight, the foresight frame, creative thinking framework was actually developed by the oldest, or through the oldest creative problem-solving, creative thinking university in the United States. And the gentleman that created this, by the way, that's Buffalo State University, which is part of the PhD program, in which I'm a part of. Matter of fact, our leaders were wise enough to do a practitioner program that all of our professors are actually practitioners. I mean, I learned from people that are mentors to companies like Ford, Zappos, Amazon, Google. You name the high-performing company, IBM. Matter of fact, Foresight is one of the systems that IBM is using to transform their entire business operation from one of a manufacturer, analog, old leadership, transactional style to creative, innovative, transformational, survey-based thinking models, and completely re-engineering the entire IBM company. It is not your grandfather's IBM anymore. It is a highly innovative, creative company, and now you see that even in their advertisements. And so I have a good friend that has actually been promoted in their learning group to be one of the leaders in IBM to implement the system worldwide. And he's one of my cohorts, actually, in my PhD program. So Long story short, um, in the Foresight creative system, what it does is it identifies how each of us within those personality types, right? Remember, you still got to know your personality types, your Enneagram, your level of leadership maturity or personal maturity, right? Expert, diplomat, opportunist, achiever, which we want to at least be at the achiever stage. All of that is still in play. Remember, we have more than one aspect of ourselves. But then we also have an attitude or an aptitude towards roles within a team. And what happens when you're building a team, a high-performing team, again, so many people, the leader will pick out people that are just like them. And if you want to use a different terminology, how about, so you think you can dance, right? What if every single dancer simply danced ballet, and there was no jazz, no tap, no interpretive dancing, no modern dancing, no clicking, no, what do you call it, stomping or popping, right? Only ballet dancers. How many people would actually like that show? Not many, right? There would be a very, very small segment of people that think that way, right? And the show would be a failure because everybody that's on the stage is doing exactly the same thing. It limits their creativity, it limits the innovation, it limits the ideas, and it keeps everybody inside a box. And we all know from the chapter in my book about the Ice Queen from the Northeast who came down. I used to work, now I'm going back 20 years. 20 years ago, I worked in an industry, and my division was known for being the most creative, the most innovative division in the industry. Matter of fact, we had manufacturers in Japan that literally sent their products to us for us to test them and to tell them whether or not they were going to sell well in the United States and what they needed to do, what innovations they needed to make in the product so that they would be a success. One of the world's one of the information transformation software products that is proliferate to the United States is one in which I and my former boss consulted with on the features that they needed to build into their products, and they wouldn't be who they are today without us having worked for that division and saying, this is what you need to do. We were out of the box thinkers. You know, you go back 20 years and people that are younger and the millennials and Gen Zs don't get it. You know, in that day, you would go to an office. Managers, if you had a window in your office, you were like something. That means like you attained, you know. And everybody was in cubes typically. Managers typically had cubes or bigger cubes around. I mean, your cube as a work cube might be 6 feet wide. You had a desktop computer, an analog phone. If you were lucky, you had a printer, right? So, and you pecked away and you did your work. You wore suits. Women couldn't wear open-toed shoes. Suit and tie environment. And that's just the way the world was. I mean, the fact that women couldn't wear open-toed shoes is insane. You know, it's just like going to a private high school. Your dress has got to be 2 inches below your knees. You know, very strict. In the box. Working remotely from home or in a shared workspace, what the heck is that? No, you reported into an office, and if you weren't in the office, you weren't at work, and you got docked a day for being out. And if your vacation days were over or your sick days were over, you didn't get paid for going in, right? Or if you were a salary worker, right, you still had to make up whatever that time was to get out and do that work because you were drawing a salary, and even as a salary person, you could get docked as a part of your salary if you were out of vacation and sick days. So, to describe the environment that we were, and this is 20 years ago, we were out and I was working split between, I managed a facility in Atlanta, but my home office was in Arizona. And when I would go to the Arizona branch, which was the innovative branch versus the branch in Atlanta that was led by old school thinkers, and everybody old school thinking, they were in cubes, managers had their offices around the workplace and had windows, and everybody was in a suit or a women's business suit or a dress or a long skirt, no open toe, right? You get the picture, right? I go out to Arizona, and you could wear sandals on Fridays. You could wear open-toed shoes. You could wear a sundress. We had Fridays. We were in jeans and t-shirts. At lunch, we worked across the street from the Tourist Player Club, and we would go across the street, grab a hot dog, hit a bucket of balls, golf balls, and go back to lunch. Are you kidding me? If we did that in Atlanta or St. Louis or the Northeast or someplace else, you going to hit buckets of balls? They're like, you're insane. Your reputation at corporate America at the time would have been that you were a slacker, you don't care anything about the company, that you probably never get anything done, that you're a joke, and I could go on and on. But yet we were the most creative, innovative group in the industry, and we were getting breaking all kinds of grounds. Just absolutely amazing. And I'm sorry that I belabored this. Long story short, we got a new senior vice president, and this gal came down, and literally we called her the ice queen from the Northeast. And I walked in one day, and it was the most sobering environment that I had ever been in that facility. A group of 3 men in gray suits met me at the front door. There were armed guards guarding the hallway to the right and the hallway to the left. Because these people in Arizona are crazy. They might actually carry guns or something in their car, right? This is 20 years even before all the violence happened. This is just how insane this person was from the Northeast. And she comes down, and they fired 75 out of roughly 120 of their most innovative, creative, profitable, open system thinkers in the entire company. This division was the division that was responsible for everything in the business that was making money. But because she was a diplomat and an opportunist, inward focused, and couldn't think outside the box, we didn't fit into her little box. So the only thing that she knew to do was just to fire everybody, because she thought the only way that was right was her way. Yeah, this is a true story. Fortunately, my group of people and my boss, my director, we made it through because we literally were the tip of the spear. They literally fired the handle of the spear, and the only thing that got kept was the tip of the spear. And the reason why they kept us was for the next year they put us on a project for us to document our intellectual property. That meant everything that's creative, everything that's good, everything and all of my innovation, all of my ideas, the things that made us unique and prospered the company, they wanted to suck out of us, put it down on paper, as if they could put it on paper and then replicate what we were doing. She didn't understand that different people think creatively and how to build teams that prosper or incite innovation and creative thought for growth. She thought it was just this static process that you could take out of somebody's mind, take out of their brain, put it on paper, and make it a process and follow the process. That's not how it works. It isn't paint by numbers. People, and I love people that like to do paint by number. That's great, but that's not being an artist. Artists create. Innovators create. Inventors create. even if it's taking something that already exists and modifying it and making it better. That's called continuous improvement, right? You should be doing that with your own life. You should be the artist, and you should see yourself as the tapestry, and you should be creating a better you every day. And through the techniques that we're talking about, you can do that, right? But this person, this ice queen from the north, came down, and all she saw is that basically in her mind, every picture was going to be a picture with a black dot or a square dot. And the dots were either going to be blue or the dot was going to be purple. And if you weren't a round blue dot or a square purple dot, then you had no place on her team or in the organization. And she fired all the squiggly lines. She fired the triangles. She fired the rectangles. She fired anything that didn't fit within her little box. And you know what happened to that company? All of a sudden, what we predicted would happen, the very first year in the product line in which I was responsible for carrying, they lost 50% of their sales. They sold $240 million of my product. And then the year after they made oh, by the way, I saw the writing on the wall when they started taking wanted our intellectual property. And I started prospecting to go get another job, and I did. I actually got a higher paying job, and it's actually how I got to Florida. I ended up taking my first national role, leaving that company because, after the IP was out of our brains, we were no longer needed. And I left, and then of course after I left, the only person, they kept one person, one out of like 120 that I know of that's still there today. And it's still the only person that has any substance to them. And we're today he and I are still friends. But anyway, back to the story. So, or I guess this is the big story. We need to take a look at and make sure that we're not like that ice queen from the north, and that we learn the value of diversity and how diversity fuels the fire of creativity and innovation. And we need to be able to identify not only who we are, but who the people that we're making up our teams on. And not only in the hiring process, identify those people and who we want to hire. Because if we hire the right people, then we can put them in the right seat in the bus. But again, if everybody on the bus is the same, you got a real problem. Real problem. So, if you can see in the background, here, let me put my slide back up here. This is actually my own personality test. I hope that you can see this well enough. But what we're looking at is that in the Foresight creative model, there's four distinct channels of creative thinking. And this mixes with our personality types and our leadership level of maturity, which we have to raise. But what we do is we take a look and we notice there's something that's called a clarifier. And a clarifier, this is that person that you know at work that always reads the instructions. They do their homework, they do their due diligence. Before they make a decision, they go out and they research and they find out all of the information they possibly can. They look deeply into an issue or a problem at work. When someone says, here is our problem statement and here is what we need to work on, they research all the aspects of that. And they clarify what that problem is. They clarify the possibilities and whatnot. The next one is an ideator. And the ideators are the ones that think big. These are the ones that say, okay, well, I see all the framework of all of the things that you've researched, the possibilities, the problems, how those could be solved and whatnot. But, man, my idea is this. And they're the ones that, if you ever watch something like the movie The Ender's Game, and the young man who was like the master commander who defeated the enemy, and he's got the computer and he's moving all these things. Or think Tony Stark, right? He's got Jarvis, and he pulls up Jarvis, and they're moving pieces around into designing stuff, right? That ideator sees all of the pieces, and they can creatively put all the different pieces in all these crazy ways. This is when you've done a creative problem solving event, and you've got the exercises, everybody come up with all these crazy ideas. No idea is insane, no idea is bad. Put them down on a sticky note, and you got sticky notes all over the wall or the conference room. And then your team sits down and begins to identify and pull out valid ideas or ideas that can connect together. And through that creative process, you come up with very innovative ideas. Maybe 4 or 5 ideas that are all valid to solve that problem statement that the clarifier clarified for you. And then the ideators come up with all these incredible ideas, right? And develop them down into maybe 5 ideas. And then they go to someone that's called a developer. And the developer looked at those 5 ideas and they come up with the prototype. They're the ones that literally make sure that I'm getting everything right so that when it goes to implementation, this thing works. A developer, this is your computer coder, right? So if you're in a business process or if you're developing software, which is one of my master's degrees in information systems, the software development lifecycle, right? On how to do this. You might have heard of agile and different ways of doing things. But in regards to this, I walk into a company, which is what I used to do, and I led a team that did this, and we go in and we investigate what's happening within that company. We study their business processes, and we look for ways that we could make them more effective and more efficient and plug some gaps in their business processes. So we come up with a whole set of clarifying due diligence set of needs or objectives that we've got to fulfill, right? The ideators then come in and they come up with all of the creative ideas on how that could actually be done and pick out 4 or 5 of the best ideas, maybe 3, maybe 2, maybe there's only 1, right? And then the developers come in and say, okay, here's what the clarifiers and here's what the ideators have outlined for me, and this is what it's supposed to look like. Now I'm going to go in and I'm actually going to build that product, and I'm going to make sure that software runs the way that it should run. And then finally we have an implementer, and the implementer is the ones that gets the job done. They're typically the project managers, right? Or the actual people that are on site implementing the solution that's been built. They're not, as my daughter likes to say, my daughter likes to be the developer, but she doesn't in her idea like to work on the front end. She doesn't like to be the implementer, all right? She doesn't like to be, I don't like to, I'm not an implementer. Although I can, and in a minute you're going to see why my lane is straight. It's the 5th category that's not on the screen. Is the implementer is typically the person that's actually going in and they're doing the job. They're the doer when it comes to going on site to a customer site and putting the plan into action. So the 5th is what I am, and the 5th is called an integrator. And what you'll notice is that my scores, I score a 34, a 34, a 35, a 34. I'm literally straight across the board, which means I function in all 4 areas. And my typical role, and this is not how I used to function. Depending on the time of my career, I was higher and lower in these areas. But I have matured to a point in leadership and understanding how to build teams, in which I have matured myself in all 4 of these areas, so that I'm stable, I'm steady, I can build a team and lead a team or lead a division or an organization or show an organization how to be more stable and how to put the people in the right seats on the bus and then have that senior leader drive the bus. I hope that makes sense. Now it's called a Foresight Creative Model. You can get certified in this. I highly recommend that at minimum that you attend some of the training. I have a friend who, again, he leads this program at IBM, and I've been meaning to talk to him about making an arrangement for my customers or for you, people that are a part of my group, to be able to take this assessment yourself, because it also comes with a second assessment on your agility as a leader. And that's something else that's very important in a VUCA world. And a volatile, unpredictable, complex, ambiguous business world, we've got to be agile. We've got to be versatile to be able to lead effectively, especially in our multicultural, multi-generational, and gender diverse workforce today. So long story short, that's the model. And I actually just took this February 11th, 2020. I took this 3 years ago and my scores were different. So it's a way to actually track your development. And we've already talked about the Briggs-Meyer. I'm going to flip over. I just wanted to show you the book. And oh, by the way, on my website, if you go to my website, www.gregbuschman, GregBuschman.com, you can actually download the Foresight Guide right from my website. You can also, it'll be underneath the creative problem solving area, because the Foresight model is a part of the creative problem solving network or discipline. But I did want to mention again where to get that book that debunks the Myers-Briggs personality test. It was written by a professor from Oxford University his name is Merv Emery. It's called The Personality Brokers. And as the book says, the strange history of Myers-Briggs and the birth of personality testing. And I highly recommend it if you're using or know someone who is a fan and using the Myers-Briggs test today and relying on it. I would just tell you flat out, I've taken it so many times for so many different jobs. I know how to manipulate it even before I got into my PhD. Anyone can manipulate it. All you got to do is look up the personality types that typically fit the job they're looking for, study what those are, and then go in and answer the questions accordingly. It's the easiest thing I've ever seen in the world to manipulate. So anyway, and not only that, right? It was 1960s middle class America, middle class white America, by the way. So last but not least, I did want to talk about something, and I'm going to flip out of this real quick. Tony Robbins has a personality test. A good friend of mine uses this, really relies on it in placing people in his organization. What it reads up there, if you can't see it, is it reads, if you're a dominant or dominant type personality, kind of a controller. If you're an influencing type person, right, charming. If you're steady, understanding, team player type person. Or if you're like a consciousness, or you're a thinker, like you're analytical, precise, compliant type person. And this actually works quite well. And Tony's done a good job, and his people have done a good job at developing this. This is one I would recommend as well. I won't say that it's necessarily as scientifically based as the ones that I'm speaking of in regards to the validity factor of being able to prove it, but I would definitely use this far beyond thinking about Myers-Briggs. And it's called the DISC test. And you can literally, his is just TonyRobbins.com/DISC, DISC, and you can look that up. Back to the presentation. The last thing we wanted to talk about, and I told you, even in my book, or in my strength cards, authenticity is super duper important. People know when you're authentic or not. Authenticity comes with maturity. Of course, there are people that are just authentically jerks, right? And that are at the diplomat, opportunist, or impulsive level. But in all honesty, I respect someone who is an opportunist, impulsive, or a diplomat, and are honest about it, because that's part of being authentic. And I respect that more than someone who is a pretender. Someone who tries to be what they're not and won't admit where they need help. Because people that are deluded into thinking that they don't need help are quite narcissistic. And narcissists tend to be very Machiavellian and not very pleasant people to work for. So think about how authentic, that it's okay. And like the group that I took over, it was almost like they were abused, an abused group of people, where the first thing I had to do to get through to them was be authentic and to convince them that I was there for their benefit, that I truly was there not only as an expert in my field, but as an achiever who wanted them to see them achieve, and not only for them to become better people and more professional in achieving their corporate careers, but knowing that the advancements in the corporate career will also help advance them in their home. And still today, like I said, I have many, many, many friends that I have worked with or led over the years that we're say hello on our thank yous. We know each other personally. We've stayed friends. And I have one good friend, and I haven't talked to him for a while, but I really appreciate him. His name is Michel Isti. He's from France, and he is the North American Vice President, or really the President, because he heads up the whole thing, for MPI Tech, a technology company here in the States. And he made a comment once to me in regard to authenticity. Now, we were working on a couple of big deals. Matter of fact, we closed the largest software deal that the company had ever seen in its history. And I negotiated that with him, sitting on a bench in Fort Lauderdale, or Boca Raton rather, looking at the water, discussing the pros and cons of what we were going to do. He's a heavy smoker, so I smoked a cigar. He was smoking cigarettes. I like cigars, as people know. And sitting on the bench, had an authentic leadership discussion about what was best for both of our companies. And at the time, the cost of his solution was just outside the reach of our client. But there was still a lot of profitability if he brought that cost within the realm or the ability of our client to acquire the technology. And he agreed to do so. And that one, we want to say, strike of the pen allowed us to sign the largest software deal that the company had ever signed, at least in the South, my area. But it struck up a friendship that began to be mutually beneficial for many years, not only in the marketing aspects of his software, but also its proliferateness. And I had an offer to go and be a vice president at the company, but it just wasn't the right thing for me to do at the time. I might have rethought that after spending 3.5 years or 3 years in this doctoral program, because the doctoral program is far more grueling than probably anything I've ever done in the corporate world. But I just wanted to give you a shout out that his statement was this: jobs come and go, but friendships can last a lifetime. We never know where we're going to end up in the corporate world, But wherever it is, it's always best to make sure that you stay friends with those that you've done business with. And Michelle, I just want to give you a shout out for that. That's a great example of being an authentic leader. And I know the people that you work with and those that work for you are very fortunate to be your followers. So with that, we'll wrap up. And next time, we're really going to get into some more of our team building aspects. And we're going to begin to go through team building skills from what is considered the team leadership or the team building Bible by Johnson & Johnson. And it is on group dynamics. And so this is going to be a lot of fun. I think we're going to learn a lot of stuff. And a lot of people are going to become very, very, very successful in their careers based on what you're going to learn over the next 5 or 6 sessions. So, TTY out.